What's going on, fellow A-Plusers? It's your boy, Adam Perez. We're back once again with a brand new movie review this time as we're going to get into The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. Warner Brothers' really first attempt at an animated film for the Lord of the Rings Middle-earth world here. And if I could be honest with you, I think to great success as well. It may not be bringing in the bucks at the box office, and considering the fact that this movie also seemed to be rushed into development in order for them to continue to hold on to some level of rights for the Lord of the Rings. I do think they probably could have done a little bit better job at the marketability for this movie, but everything that I've seen leading up to this, whether it be the posters, the trailers, really got me fascinated because Tolkien's Middle Earth world is one that I definitely love throwing myself into, whether that be the Hobbit trilogy, which I wasn't quite fond of, but I enjoy visiting the world. I've really enjoyed what they've been capable of doing when it comes to Rings of Power. And so you tell me more Lord of the Rings, I'm definitely there. And in animated form this time around, with an incredible director certainly backing it as well, and a story, one that I'm not really too familiar with, but no, they kind of pulled from the appendices a little bit, dealing with a particular time period, maybe adding a little bit more to the story. I always find it a little bit more fascinating, especially when they pull from Tolkien's work and certainly build upon it. So, The War of the Rohirrim is one of those films that I was really looking forward to seeing, especially in Dolby Cinema or Dolby theaters. That's where I wind up getting an opportunity to see it in today, with amazing, amazing color and sound, to certainly say the least. If I were to recommend this movie to you guys, I would definitely see it either in IMAX or on Dolby if you can find a screening. I'm a little bit disappointed that I literally only saw two screenings available for it in Dolby here. I don't know what else was taking up the Dolby theater at this time, whether that be like Craven the Hunter that's not doing so well, but this movie should be seen with great color and a big screen if you get the opportunity to do so. But let's go ahead and talk about this film a little bit. I'll try not to get into spoiler material too much, but I really want to just give my thoughts on it. So, should you go see The War of the Rohirrim? I certainly suggest that you do. Philippa Boyens, one of the producers for Warner Brothers, and along when it comes to the Lord of the Rings stuff, has said they plan on doing more animated movies, and I certainly hope so, especially more animated standalone films, if you will. And I say bring it on, especially after watching this. First and foremost, the animation is incredible in here. I love the movement of the characters. I thought all the character designs in here were simply breathtaking. The incredible landscape, I thought was gorgeous, especially when you're talking about just Rohan in general. I thought this was a really great sort of landscape to really bring to life when it comes to animation. A little bit of like 2D effects mixed in with some CGI, certainly at times. I thought really helped really bring out the animation for this particular movie. So the animation to me is off the charts, especially when you start getting into the battles. The action sequences in here are big, great for the big screen, and as epic as you would certainly hope that a Tolkien battle certainly turns out to be. The movie has a level of stakes that I certainly didn't think that I was going to feel when it comes to some of these characters. I mean, when you start talking about the lineage of Helm Hammerhand and just the people in Rohan in general, and seeing Helm's sons and his daughter and things like that, and his lineage, there are certainly stakes here when everybody kind of goes into battle a little bit. And so for me, the weight of the action, I thought really helped carry this film incredibly well. So animation was on point, action and big in scope that you certainly would hope for when it comes to that of a Tolkien movie. I thought the score also was incredible. They had some touches of like the classic Lord of the Rings theme from the Warner Brothers trilogy in here, also mixed in with new pieces of score as well. So great music to certainly help for rousing moments, somber moments as well. I thought it just really flowed beautifully, to be quite frank with you. I really enjoyed the characters in here too, man. They did show like an 8-minute sequence, I believe, that they dropped a few weeks before the release of this particular film. And in that sequence, I immediately fell in love with Helm Hammerhand, who is in fact sort of the king of Rohan at this particular point in time. Bigger than life sort of guy. I can't remember the gentleman's name that did his voice. I'm gonna have to look this up real quick. Voice for Helm Hammerhand, because I know it's a incredible Brian Cox, incredible actor, but oh my gosh, does he give Helm Hammerhand just the gravitas that he certainly deserves as the King of Rohan in here. His interactions with his daughter are so extremely heartfelt, but he was just a bigger than life sort of guy. Anytime he was on the screen, he had a presence about himself, which I really appreciated. I can see certainly why he was king, why he was intimidating to those certainly around him, if you will. Yeah, man, I just thought his arc in here was beautifully done, especially towards the end. Like they really did true to the legacy of his character. I mean, especially his fate and his final stand at the gates of Helm's Deep was something breathtaking and certainly gorgeous to watch. I mean, when he's battling the people single-handedly on the bridge and you see it fade out with like the sun just beating into the camera sort of thing as it pulls back from the battle. I mean, just tremendous feels and emotions that you get from not only the character but just how beautiful this the animation and action and everything was just beautifully told in here. They do stay true at least to the idea of like the lineage of his character. I believe it's his niece in Freya that eventually goes on to become sort of the king of Rohan. And while he's not in this movie a ton, he definitely does have very important aspects, whether that be the first half of this film when it comes to the rescue of Hera, his pleadings to Helm in regards to trying to give him some advice, which Helm unfortunately doesn't take, in the sense of thinking that taking his advice maybe makes him feel a little bit weaker and offended and kind of boots Freya out a little bit, but then also seeing Freya being projected as like the cavalry towards the end of this movie, and really sort of taking the helm. I personally would have loved to have seen more of him and wish Helm didn't discard him and kind of push him out, because he was a character that was certainly growing on me, especially when it comes to the rescue of Hera in here. So I thought Freya probably could have been utilized a little bit more, but I enjoyed certainly his presence in here, and so it was always fascinating to me to kind of see how the kingship, if you will, continue to go down further down, certainly their to go further down their lineage, you know what I mean? Another character in here that I thought was fantastic was Wolf, the antagonist in here. As brutal as they certainly come, I mean, the guy is certainly out for vengeance in here, and it seems like he's certainly been wronged almost at like every turn, if you will. Definitely out for blood, feels like he needs to get revenge for the death of his father very early on in this movie, but everything certainly gets taken away from him. It almost, Wolf got to the point to where it's just like, man, he didn't get the girl. He got bested by a girl as a kid, didn't get her hand in marriage, had his father die. And like now it almost feels like not only is he alone, but he almost has to like prove himself to everybody certainly around him. I mean, the man was giving off like incel vibes all movie long, if you will, in the sense of not being able to stand Hera any longer, being a backstabber, not any type of man of honor sort of thing. I just thought he fit the antagonist role to perfection in here. Really not taking anybody's guidance, just solely focus on vengeance, and it didn't matter who he had to cut down, in the sense that he really wanted to just take out everybody for all the wrong that certainly was done to him. And I think that made for a really great antagonist in here. And opposite of him in the character and our main character here in Hera, who I thought was an incredible protagonist in here. I love the relationship between these two, considering the fact that I don't want to say once were lovers, but were clearly best friends. Hera certainly felt some type of way in closeness and kinship to somebody like Wolf, who, again, as they grew up as kids, but Wolf certainly wanted to take that next step, maybe feeling some type of way for her that she certainly didn't. So I wouldn't say lovers, turn to enemies, but somebody that clearly had feelings, got rejected, had a lot of terrible things happen to his life, and really wanted to kind of put it out on Hera in here. And I just really enjoyed her, certainly as sort of the wild one, in the sense of just being free, as they sort of refer to her here. Not somebody that really wants to kind of settle down or anything like that, but just wants to enjoy adventure and certainly the gift of life, right? The idea that somebody is more than capable, but you've got other people around you that are certainly telling you who and what you should certainly be, how you should certainly act. And Hera's just not one of those characters that is comfortable with being in that role. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Eowyn from, if I'm pronouncing her name right, from the Two Towers, and later in Return of the King. The idea that she doesn't necessarily want to be this type of person, or feels like she belongs on the front line and wants to do other things to kind of help out her Rohan in general. So I do wonder if Eowyn kind of looked up to Hera a little bit. I believe the narration in here, which I thought was beautiful, whether that the beginning, middle, and end, to kind of add layers of context, if you will. I love the idea that it talks about the concept of who Hera is, but somebody that may not necessarily be remembered in times, right? That maybe didn't get written about as much as she certainly deserved to have been. So to kind of see somebody, because of their status in society, kind of get forgotten or mulled over in their lore and in their lineage, sort of thing, but come to find out like an additional story of a character and person who is just as impactful on that nation and on that group of people, is really fascinating to me. And so I don't know if Eowyn knew about Hera, but I can see, if she did, where she would certainly get some of her motivations from and inspirations from as well. And so I really just enjoyed who Hera was as a character in here, in regards to being that free spirit, but somebody that was certainly more than capable of holding her own. I mean, when you are literally the daughter of Helm Hammerhand, like, you're gonna learn something, regardless if your father wants you to get married to somebody in Gondor and have kids and live a completely different life. She certainly was definitely prepared by him to certainly be the woman that she certainly needed to be. And I really love the moment between Helm and Hera in here at the gates of Helm, before he pushes her through and just lets her know that, like, you were born ready for this position, right? Like, the people are going to be counting on you and you're more than ready. And I think she certainly needed to hear that from her father, even though she believed that. I think Helm understanding his own ego and not necessarily listening to her at times, or realizing her wittiness and her cleverness and how smart she was in certain situations. I really appreciate Helm being that type of man to acknowledge some of his wrongs and do his best to certainly make up for it. And his last stand, I tell you, like, from an animated point of view, is like one of the coolest moments, I thought, in the War of the Rohirrim, to be quite frank with you. If I did have any issues with it, with this particular movie, the editing at times was an issue for me, in the sense of, I don't necessarily know if they depict the turn of time very well, or some jump sequences, like, or maybe it's the idea that the editing, especially towards the last half of this movie, felt a little bit rushed to me. I do wonder if they had more story in between some of the moments that were edited out. I personally would have loved to have seen it, like, for instance, when Hera, like, the whole idea of Hera summoning the bird to give the Helm Hammerhand's armor to Freya. Like, the way that it was edited, I was under the impression she was going to get on the bird and ride the bird and deliver it herself, sort of thing. But she clearly stayed behind while the bird went on and did the delivery himself. So, I really would have loved to have seen more Hera and Freya sort of interaction in there, in that sense of establishing what's to come, her plan for how she wants Freya to sort of execute his return in regards to being the cavalry in the battle towards the end. You know what I mean? So sometimes the editing, I thought, threw the pacing off a little bit, or confused me a little bit in regards to the trajectory of the story. So I do think the editing could have been a little bit better in this movie. And then also, I'm not necessarily sure if this film needed the Lord of the Ring references that it did. And I speak of two in particular. One, we do get ourselves, and this will be a little spoilerish, so if, come back when I do this. The reference of Saruman in here. Granted, we are now getting into a different age, or I should say say, like the second age of the king lineage of the people of Rohan. So it's sort of like a fresh start. And now Isengard also has a sort of a fresh start, as well, as it seems as though Saruman is taking over. Like if they were gonna be like, and introducing Saruman, like it felt a little bit forced in the sense of I kind of wanted to have seen Saruman maybe come into power. Granted, I don't necessarily know how that fits into, like, how, does that even have a place in the War of the Rohirrim movie? But I almost felt like because they just added it in there, well, granted, I do think it's a great sort of a timeline moment for us as viewers and people that are very familiar with Tolkien's work, of understanding, like, yeah, they got the time period right. This is when this happened because Saruman's in there at this moment. Like for them, that's cool. But to me, it felt a little bit forced, like just thrown in there for us as viewers to say, hey, this is truly connected to the Lord of the Rings trilogy that we just saw, like a reference we're familiar with. And then also the name dropping of Gandalf a little bit, also towards the end, in regards to Freya now going on to other adventures, maybe why she isn't referenced in stories as much in the appendices or in the lore in general, I should certainly say, because she eventually goes on, because she gets a message, and a wizard by the name of Gandalf certainly wants her to help, sort of thing. It is one of those things where if we get a sequel or we get another film about Hera in some particular way, then maybe there's context to this, right? Like maybe there's a payoff certainly down the line. But if this is meant to be sort of its own little standalone film, it did feel a little bit forced. Cool little wink and nod, I'm like, oh, that's cool, she gets the opportunity to have some adventures with Gandalf. I'm just a little bit bummed because it's like, I'd never heard Gandalf talk about her before at all, or reference her at all. So in other future movies, maybe other standalone animated films, who knows, maybe Hera pops up in some weird, well, I was going to say some weird way, and maybe The Hunt for Gollum, but I think time period wise, we're like 200 years separated from the Lord of the Rings movie. So I don't expect Hera to come back. But if you are going to reference her being on an adventure with Gandalf, I now need to see that at some point in time. Don't just leave me with that, you know what I mean? So there are some Lord of the Ring references I felt were maybe a little bit too forced in here, but maybe it works for other people. So those are really some of the issues that I had with it. But from a story, I think they did a really marvelous job of taking a concept and a time period and moments that happened in the appendices, and certainly building upon it and allowing me to get familiar with some brand new characters that I've fallen in love with in regards to Hera, and now Helm Hammerhead, who to me is just like the epitome of like manhood now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when you literally get frozen on the battlefield from fighting all night and nobody's been able to take you down besides the element, like, yeah, bro, that you've earned my respect, Helm Hammerhand. So again, animation, beautiful, action, epic, great character arcs and storytelling in here that allowed me to have some level of stakes and grief for some of the characters that didn't make it out of here, attached with a beautiful, rousing score that reminded me of the Lord of the Rings musical score and new additions to it. I want more animated Lord of the Rings films. I truly do. I would be interested to see if they change their budget. I think this movie came in at about $30 million. I don't know if that's expensive or not for something like an animated film, but maybe with better marketing, more time to really establish the idea that Lord of the Rings is also going in the direction of animated. Maybe it's something they start doing instead of big theaters. Maybe they do streaming. But for me, if it's Lord of the Rings, it belongs on the big screen, because I felt the gravitas, I felt the beauty of it. I felt like I was in the world of Middle Earth when I watched this movie, and I want to see more on the big screen as well. So look, guys, at the end of the day, these are simply my A+ opinions. I want to know yours. Have you checked out the War of Rohirrim? Are you fascinated in it? Is it something that you want to go ahead and check out for yourself? I definitely want to know. And if you have seen the movie, let me know your thoughts. At the end of the day, these are simply my A+ opinions. I always want to know yours. But until next time, do me a big favor, guys. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.